Okay, um, mental health. I think it comes under mental health. I'm really not sure. I think the problem is we've just had an announcement here by one of our government ministers to say that children in 2024 have had it far worse than children ever. And there is that part, I think a lot of us of an older generation who would say, okay, well, lots of kids went through the war, they survived without mental health problems. Kids survived through the 60s and 70s with the Cold War and constant air raid warnings, and this is what you do in the event of a nuclear attack, effectively saying you take your house apart and sometimes during the process of taking your house apart you die. They went through teachers' strikes in the 70s, they went through power cuts in the 70s, all denying them what they could do. 80s, I don't know whether there's anything particularly bad about 80s, and I think 80s and 90s, I think is where it started to go wrong. Because I think what has caused the problem in 2024, sure, COVID, when for over a year kids weren't at school, they were being educated, and I use that term loosely, they were being educated at home, and that's never good. Kids need social interaction, but I don't think that was the problem. I think the biggest problem we've had is the use of mobile phones and social media. I think it's back in those other decades that I spoke about prior to the 80s. If children wanted to have a social life, well, they got up, they went out, they met their friends, they had a social life. And that was basically how it had worked for centuries. And very obviously there were kids with ADHD, autism, etc. But these days it almost feels, so if you don't have kids with ADHD or autism in your family, then there's something wrong. So hey, go out, get a diagnosis. And you think about how much the mobile phone and social media is used. It's almost, some people use it as a babysitter. It's just, oh, go play on your phone, go talk to your friends on whatever, whichever the latest social media is. I mean, it used to be MySpace. Over the years it's been MySpace, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, Discord, which I really don't think kids should be touching. And I don't know whether any kids have ever been old enough to use Twitter or X, or whether indeed they're using Threads. But MSN Messenger, of course, that was one of the first ones. The issue is not so much that they're using it, it's just how it's replaced the real world. I've certainly got experience of it myself, where somebody will be very rude, quite insulting even to me on social media, and they see that as acceptable. But if I say to them in person, why did they do that? They just, oh, don't take it so seriously, it's only social media. As though somehow social media puts some distance between you and the consequences of the person you're talking about. And of course then you've got the other problem. How much easier is it to bully somebody else on social media than it ever is in the real world? Nobody's going to punch you in the face if you insult them on social media, because it's effort. You've got to go to the real world to find them to punch them in the face. So this is where I think the disconnect has happened. It's the anxiety that goes with it of, oh my god, I've got so many messages, I can't keep up with all this. To the other end, why is nobody contacting me? Why has that person ghosted me? And let's put that in context of the way it used to be prior to mobile phone social media. You'd go around somebody's house, you'd knock on the door, and if they weren't in, they weren't in. It wasn't the end of the world. You went to another friend's, and if they weren't in, they weren't in. If you went home, well, then you went home, you played with your toys. That was as complicated as it got, so it's no wonder nowadays when everyone expects instant replies, like you expect to see somebody's already replying to the message you're still typing, the level of anxiety that can come into that is huge, isn't it? How do you say to a child of 10, 12, 14 years old, oh, that's not good for you, that you need to put your phone down? I mean, how does that even work? How does somebody get away with saying to their child, no, I don't think you should have a mobile phone, not really. You don't need any of that social media. Go around and see if your mate wants to go out and play. And of course they go, if they listen and go round to see if their mate wants to go out to play, well, are there any of the mates going to go out and play? No, of course not, because they're on social media talking to other mates, and if they go out, then they can't be doing that, can they? So why would they go out? Or they're playing a game on their phone, or they're using the Xbox, or other games consoles exist. So I feel tech is to blame. But can we blame tech on its own? In reality, of course we can't blame tech on its own, because no child is born with a mobile phone in their hand. Might look like that, but they're not. So somebody gives them a mobile phone, somebody pays for that connection, somebody makes sure they've got decent Wi-Fi. And those somebodies are called parents for those kids, lucky enough as most are to have parents, at least one. So why are parents now so frightened of confronting their children and saying, no, this isn't healthy? It was barely healthy when I was your age. It's definitely not healthy now. This has got to stop. I personally don't have an answer to it. I think it's tragic. I don't think it's curable. I think there's loads of kids that are going to get diagnosed with one syndrome or another, and maybe they have. But I think we know what caused it, because I don't think kids are born with ADHD, etc. I feel that kids are raised to have that. And I know that's controversial, but I've seen it. I've seen a lot. Volunteering at special needs schools, the amount of kids that will go in there with a diagnosis of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and a couple of years later they're in mainstream school, there's nothing wrong with them. And it's all because it's easier to give them a label than it is for educational psychologists, if those people still exist, to say to those parents, well, I'm really sorry, but you need to parent this child. You need to make sure this child is educated, they're doing their homework. You need to not let them sit on the phone or the games console till 3 o'clock in the morning, because you're damaging this child. But nobody wants to say that to parents, because, well, everybody's doing it. So does a diagnosis even help though? The trouble with diagnosis is some of them you get extra support, but the days where that was instant, immediately in place, schools knew what to do, health professionals knew what to do, they're long gone. They're too stretched. So there is no special provision that goes along with the label. And once they've got that tag of autism or ADHD, how useful is it going to be in adult life? Sure, it explains to others what's wrong with them, but it doesn't, because the trouble, something like autism, is on a spectrum. There is no one size fits all in autism. It's a spectrum ranging from high functioning, you'd barely know, they'd barely know, to totally not functioning. And if you don't know what position somebody is on that spectrum, you've got no idea, no way of knowing how you can support that person, how you could make the workplace better suited to them, how you could make a school better suited to them, a holiday, whatever. So I feel if it's one of those things that's on your medical records, at some point that's going to come out when you apply for jobs. And we know that disability discrimination is illegal, but let's get real, come on. You've got 2 applicants on the sheet. Both of them seem to be equally qualified. One of them's got ADHD and the other hasn't. Who are you going to take on, really? I mean, I think it's fair to say that you're not going to say, well, let's go with the one with ADHD, because that way I can spend lots of money and resources on making the workplace perfect for them. The only way you're going to do that is if you looked at your equal opportunities policy and worked out that actually you're not doing very well, you need a few boxes ticked. So yeah, you are going to take on those ethnic minorities, disability minorities, everything you're going to need to tick the boxes to show that you're compliant. Yeah, you're going to do that. But if you're already compliant, why would you take on somebody with a disability? And that's what it is. These labels, they become a disability. They don't make you more able. They actually make you more disabled, more disadvantaged. I think people need to think very carefully before they go and get themselves diagnosed, because it can all go wrong. I know that if I had a check, a proper diagnosis, I know that I'd be on the autistic spectrum. It's a problem I've had my entire life. But at no point did I ever see that it would benefit me to get a diagnosis, because there was no way anyone was going to be able to make adjustments to make my life better. In fact, it would have worked against me. I had 2 special needs kids to raise, as well as 2 thankfully healthy children. The reality is, in life we have to make choices, and get a diagnosis by all means if it helps your own mental health. But if it's going to set you back in your life, just think seriously. Think seriously before making that appointment to go down to the doctors and get them to do the diagnosis. Obviously this series, this YouTube channel is quite new, although it's actually my oldest YouTube channel. I've had this one over a decade. Never really got used, it just sat there and wasn't used. So I've got my other channels which are very active, but I decided to turn this one into my vlog. I've got a blog which I've also been doing for a great many years, but in the age of technology, hey, let's jazz it up a bit, shall we? If you do think you're going to enjoy it, you think that maybe I'll improve in time, that you can tolerate my absolutely horrible voice, which I really don't like. Maybe that's true, maybe it is awful, maybe it's just me. Why don't you like and subscribe? You'll be notified when I make another video. If you didn't enjoy it, maybe try again. I don't know. I'm not doing this to make money. I'm not doing this to be rich on social media revenue. I'm just doing it. Maybe it will help. Maybe it will just help me. That's good enough. So I'll leave it there. I've now got some serious editing to do, all on the assumption that the technology I'm using is going to work. Bye.